It's Mike Titino with the Safety First Home Inspection Show.
So thank you for having me. It was an absolute pleasure. Love being here. I love chopping it up with you.
Catherine, thank you so much.
No, thank you.
I'm proud of you, man. Good for you. I like it.
This is Mike Titino with the Safety First Podcast Show, and today I have a very special guest, Mr. Shawn Waller. Thank you very much for coming on my show. I know your time is very valuable.
Thanks for having me here, bro.
I really appreciate it. So why don't you introduce yourself?
So, all right. So Shawn Waller, Shawn Your Realtor on Instagram, licensed real estate agent. I think I've been licensed for like 8 years now. I always lose track. It's either 8 or 9 years.
Okay.
We'll get into that. I won't get the whole thing, but
that was actually my next question. So how did you get into the real estate industry?
I got into the real estate industry because one day I Googled how could you make $100,000 without going to college.
Really?
Yeah, basically. But it was a bunch of different events that happened. But after that, my mother passed away, so I was like kind of like in a space. Thank you. I was in a space where I was trying to figure out myself. Of
course.
And then I started Googling and, a lot of other things. I was like, real estate agent, I could do that. It's a customer service business. I've always been in customer service. I could do it.
So what were you doing prior?
Prior, I did a lot of different things. So I worked Home Depot, Lowe's, swept parking lots, like anything I could do.
Whatever it takes.
To make money the legal way. I never wanted to do it the illegal way. So, yeah.
Of course, because that eventually will come to an end. And
been there.
It's not.
Yeah, I grew up my father in and out of the system, so I've witnessed that.
You learn.
I never wanted it.
No, I agree. I definitely agree. So from the point that you Googled how to make $100K to the time you actually started taking the course and preparing yourself to get licensed, how much time was in between that?
It was a lot of time in between because I actually took the courses part-time while I was working full-time.
Okay.
So I was working at Sleepy's full-time when I was taking the classes, and I could only do it either after work or on a weekend. So it probably took 5 months for me to actually get my license. Prior to taking the test, it took me like 3 times to take the test and pass it. So it was a long ride.
But I feel like that test, there's nothing, I don't say nothing, but majority of it, you're not applying encroachment and
90% of it you're not doing in the field. Yeah,
exactly. I feel like they need to, I guess, have more classes on interaction with people and, the emotional side of real estate, because this is, your client's biggest purchase. Mm-hmm. They don't teach that in school or on ways to handle things, objections, because let's face it, real estate is a sales industry and you're going to get tons of rejections. Mm-hmm. So I feel like, for those who may think it's easy because, realtors, majority of them, they only post the just closed, the
highlight reels, of course.
Correct. And then people gravitate towards that thinking they just want the end result, but then they don't realize like the back end work that really goes into it.
Exactly. I think if they taught that stuff, we'd have less real estate.
100%.
If they taught customer service, half of them wouldn't make it.
No, I definitely agree. So you've been licensed for 8 years now. And then I feel like, you've been kind of diving into more of the content, the social media, investing in your brand, which is obviously paying off. Mm-hmm. Speak about it.
So it initially started in 2020 during the pandemic. I had a full-time job. I was working property management. I was making way over 6 figures, but I hated the job. It was a desk job. Just couldn't do it
Similar
anymore.
Story I have.
Couldn't do it, bro. So I wound up leaving in October, and I started real estate full-time in January. I was doing rocking and rolling, had 3 big deals under contract. Pandemic hit, shut everything down, shut all my deals down. So now, the pandemic hit, I'm home with my daughter. My wife is deemed essential. She had to work still, so I'm home with a 2-year-old. I had no idea how to keep a 2-year-old entertained, so I started putting the camera on, and I was calling myself Quarantine Dad.
Yeah.
It was kind of asking people for advice at the same time, but posting it. And it started to get traction, especially on Facebook. People were loving it. They were actually looking forward to it every day.
Because they're home too.
Exactly. And I had so many deals that were just falling apart. And to get to the content part, you invited me to a dinner.
That's actually part of my next, Good.
So you invited me to a dinner, and I walked into that room. I knew everyone that was in that room because I followed them all on social media, and no one knew me. And that didn't sit right with me. So I said to myself, this is going to be the last time I'm going to be at a table with a bunch of people that don't know who the hell I am. And the funny story is, when we were ending that dinner, I went to the bathroom, I unfollowed everyone. because I knew we were all going to exchange social medias.
Yeah.
And I wanted it to be fresh right there. Yeah.
So for people who don't know, that dinner was actually for me a monumental moment because actually you were the 100th inspection.
Yeah.
So that was my first year in business, and I hit my 100th home inspection, and I thought it would be a good idea to have some of the the top people in the industry who helped me get there just host a dinner. And I really thought nothing of it, but what ended up happening is, like you mentioned, some of these people are meeting for the first time, and whether they're friends on social media, they just haven't physically connected yet. I figured it'd be a great opportunity. And not only that, after that first night, I felt like it was a success, and I started doing it every month. And then sure enough, I started getting messages like, let me know when the next one is, this and that. And afterwards, people are telling me that they're doing deals with people who they met at my dinner.
Yeah, I did my first deal with Beth
Yes.
right after that.
Exactly.
Yeah, and we had a relationship from there, so we knew each other, and it helped everything go seamlessly. Yeah,
exactly. And for those who don't know, I definitely want to share this story on air, how Shawn and I had met, because this is a funny story. But I have my version of it, and you have your version, so I definitely want to tap into both. So my version was when I first got started, and I still do this now, because if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right?
Agreed.
So I started going to open houses like every week, and I would literally time block hours at a time and just show up, network, introduce myself. And I show up to your listing, and I can tell that when I walked in and I'm telling you, listen, I'm a home inspector, would love to work with you, this and that. And I could tell you were kind of like, all right, who is this guy? Like, I don't know this dude. Why am I going to trust my client's biggest purchase? Which is totally understandable, because technically I'm a stranger. No one knows who I am. And I gave you my information, and I really didn't think anything of it, because I've gotten that reaction multiple times, which I get it. But then the following weekend, I'm doing the same thing again, going to open houses, networking, and you were with a buyer at the time, and we both kind of showed up at the same time to an open house. And that's where I guess I was kind of indirectly telling you, like, I'm here to stay. Like,
yeah, I'm out here.
I'm going to be out here every weekend. So if you don't see me on this one or next one, you're going to see me again, like, no matter what. And then I feel like that's when you kind of like gave me a shot.
Of course.
And then, the rest is history, as they say.
Well, listen, you get those pictures from everyone all day long.
Everybody.
Especially, everyone's a home inspector, everyone's a real estate agent.
100%.
The funny thing about that story was that wasn't even my listing.
So what's your side of the story? Yeah.
So I'll go back to that side first. So that wasn't even my listing. I was actually helping another agent out at that time. Like I said, business was a little slow for me. And I was like, you know what? They need help for an open house. Let's go. And this one, open houses was dead.
Yeah.
So you were probably like one of like 4 people that actually came that day.
Yeah.
So,
of course.
And that's how we actually connected. But we met prior to that, when I don't know if a lot of people know that you were actually a real estate agent at one point.
It's so funny, because at some point in time in almost every one of my episodes, I mentioned that. So I had my real estate license, for those who may not know, for about a year and change. And some realtors I've met as a home inspector, but very, very few I've met when I had my license. So,
and I met you at an open house. I think it was your listing.
Probably.
I can't remember the client, which is weird, because I usually remember everyone. I can't remember who I bought there, but I remember the house.
Yep.
It was in Baldwin, I think.
And that house in Baldwin was my listing, and I cold called
Dope.
FSBO, and I got it. But as you know, with real estate, you have to be hands-on, active, and you have to hunt. You know?
And it's a small business, man. That's why I tell people,
Exactly.
watch how you treat people, because you never know when you're going to bump into them again.
Absolutely. So after that open house, then we met the following week. The following weekend.
Yeah, I think you DM'd me actually on
Most
Facebook.
likely.
Yeah,
most likely.
On Facebook. I'm like, who the hell is DM?
Following up.
Yeah, but we met up and we connected. I'm like, you know what? You're just getting into it. I'm just getting traction going. Like, why not make it happen?
And ironically, you were my 100th home inspection.
Yeah.
It was in Bethpage. It was in
East Meadow.
East Meadow. I'm sorry. Yeah, and that was my 100th one. So, but it just goes to show, for those who are either watching this or listening, you have to keep following up.
Yeah.
I could have chalked that up as, I'm never going to work with this guy again, just off of that one experience. But I always tell people, follow him on social media in a non-invasive way. Drop a message, nice meeting you, like their content, and you kind of build the rapport from there. And then what's worked for me is just showing up.
Yeah, that's all it's about. It's always showing up.
It's one thing to message people, but I message people as like a follow-up after I actually meet them. So you have to spend the time, and showing up is the most time-consuming thing that you can do in your business. But the return on it is, it's endless.
It's priceless. It's priceless.
Exactly.
And like you said, it may not happen today, tomorrow, but it can happen in next month or two. You know what I mean? Like you never know when that ROI is going to come back.
Because when you meet the people in person, they're going to refer you to within their network, and you didn't have to do the legwork to actually meet that person.
Exactly.
You know? So it's definitely all about laying groundwork. And so you started your content.
So I started my content, and I think that dinner was in August. I want to say I started researching content after that, like who I was going to use for videographer, bump to the matter of visual. And we started in October, because I said it was going to take me 3 months to get traction. So I figured October, November, December, going into January, it's going to take off where it took off, and that's exactly what happened.
Now, speaking of content, you actually started your own podcast show as well.
Yes. I started my podcast that February.
So what made you get into that?
And no one has ever asked me that question. Honestly, I started the podcast because I was looking around and I was like, you know what? I'm looking at these other podcasts. There's nobody on these podcasts that look like me. Look like me, walk like me, talk like me.
Yeah.
None of them are inviting people on there that look like me, walk like me, talk like me. Why not have
Except me.
Except you. Yeah. Except you. Honestly.
Yeah.
If you look at the landscape, and it's usually the same guests on the same podcast. Yeah. And I was like, you know what? Let me create my own, to have my own voice, build my own brand, and that's how it happened.
Of course. And you incorporate, how do I say, you incorporate what you're passionate about. Like one thing that you and I have in common, like I love hip hop music.
Facts. Yeah.
So when I see your content, and then I feel like you incorporate music that you basically grew up on, and that's part of you. That's part of your brand.
Yeah, as part of the brand, and people run away from it. Energy has its own language.
Of course.
Music has its own language.
100%.
You can listen to a record today that could take you back 10 years and tell you exactly where you at.
I was listening to a song while driving here 5 minutes ago that brought me back to a time when I was I was going to LA, and I put on a Jay-Z song. It's Family Feud off of the 444 album.
Yeah, off the 444 album.
I don't know why, but just I was listening to that song waiting to go to LAX, and when I was playing it just now, I was like, that just brought me back to
right back in that same spot.
Point. I'm like, that's crazy.
Now imagine how many people that are in our age group that could feel the same way. So I said to myself, I don't want to chase everyone. I want a certain crowd, right? And the crowd is, they're going to look like me, walk like me, talk like me. They don't have to be the same.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? Like we all come from different backgrounds, but it's that 24-year-old to that 55-year-old that probably all grew up on the same type of music. You know what I mean? It has its own language, so why not put it out?
And the good thing, the beauty about music is that it's universal.
It's universal.
Like it literally brings people together from all walks of life.
You'd be shocked the DMs.
Of course.
The DMs I get from people that don't look like us at all. That are like, yo, I remember that record. I remember going to a concert, and it's crazy.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And they give me referrals from it.
That's amazing. And that's a very important point, because when it comes to branding, it can't be always, whether it's your product, your service. Like I incorporate my personal life because I'm attracting like-minded people. Every morning I'm posting books, I'm reading fitness, this and that, and people who read, people who work out, they gravitate to it.
That's your
common
brand. Yeah.
Exactly.
Sometimes I look at the books that you read, like, I gotta get that.
Exactly. Yeah. And I get messages too, like what book is that? Or people will message me like, I love that book, I read that a couple of years ago. And then not only that, people recommend books too.
Yeah.
Some of the books I'm reading is strictly off of DMs right now.
But you're building your own community. If you think about
100%.
It, it's your own community that you're building. Like, you don't have to sell yourself to them. They already know who you are.
Exactly. And then that actually helps out too when you're going to networking events, when people feel like that, people feel like they know you, and I always tell people when you're going to networking events, like, I don't even talk about home inspections. You don't hear me once saying, oh, listen, hire me for your... We talk about personal stuff, life, things like that, and then the business follows.
Business is always going to follow.
And I almost cringe when I hear, I don't want to say names, I obviously can't say names, but people in certain industries, they just start soliciting people and just, oh, we do this better than, or...
That's all they know, bro.
And this is all networking events when people kind of don't... They don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
You want to go to network, of course, but you don't want to be pitched all night.
That's why I'm not salesy. I hate people that are salesy to me. So I would try not to be salesy to anyone else.
So after you started the podcast show, after you dove into and reinvesting into your brand, the content, you actually recently switched teams.
Yes, so I actually switched brokerages. So I was originally with Signature Premier for 4 years, and now I'm with Serhant.
Okay, and what made you make that switch?
Just the branding.
Okay.
You know, if Serhant is a national,
of course,
national name,
yeah.
And I felt like where I was going with my content, it kind of made more sense. And I've never wanted to be hyper local. Like I always feel like you could be bigger than that.
Of course.
So why not extend my brand bigger than being local?
Now, since you've switched firms, I'm assuming you've made new connections also,
of course,
over there too. And it's funny because there's been other realtors that I actually work with within your new firm that recently switched over as well.
Yeah,
like Miriam's one of them.
Yeah, we all came over at the same time, and
really?
Everyone has like the same like chip on their shoulder, which I love. We're all trying to prove something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, of course.
Yeah.
And then I want to go back to just one last thing about your podcast. You actually had MG, the mortgage guy, there.
Yeah,
he doesn't pull up to just like anyone's podcast show, so that's definitely a milestone.
That was a milestone. That's why I told him that was the GOAT series for me.
Really?
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Listen, one thing about me, bro, I'm always gonna give everyone their flowers. Like,
yeah.
It's no reason not to.
And that's why you're here now.
I appreciate that. But when I decided I wanted to get into content, EYL and MG was like they're the first ones that popped up on my screen because during the pandemic we were all locked into our phones. I'm big on education. Like I like to educate myself, and I was attracted to that content because it was all educational and it was all geared towards our demographic in a way. You know what I'm saying?
Of course.
So watching those dudes do what they were doing, especially doing it at their level, and they look like us, I was like, I gotta have MG on here.
How do you get a hold of him?
How did I get a hold of him?
How do you meet him?
That's a funny story. I've been DMing MG probably for like 2 years. Just to like connect, like, yo, bro,
of course,
like,
yeah.
I enjoy what you do, blah, 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 Queens get the money, all that stuff. And I just watch what people do. I forget how I think I actually met him I met him at your dinner.
In person?
In person. That was the first time we met in person.
Cool, okay.
I told him, I was like, yo, bro, I got a podcast. I sent him a clip with me and Femi. Shout out to Fem.
Yes.
And he was like, yo, let's do it.
I got to get Femi on here next.
Got to get Femi on here.
And his son, too.
Yeah. And that was a dope podcast. I think I watched that podcast like 5 times because he was giving so much gems on it.
Yeah. And I had him on. He was sitting in the same chair as you at one point. And that's definitely an episode that I've rewatched also.
I think I rewatched that like 4 times.
Yeah. And he's just the kind of person that he wants to see you succeed. And what I've learned about successful people, because I have a few mentors within our industry, and these are people that are like top, like they are at the peak of their career, and they put themselves in my position, and they don't hide anything, and they say, listen, if I were you, I would do X, Y, and Z, and then I take bits and pieces from each and every one of them, and then I apply what I think would work, because let's face it, everyone doesn't have the same blueprint on, like my goals aren't identical to their goals, but there are things that they've done that I can definitely apply too.
Exactly.
And then whenever I'm around other like-minded people, I instantly share that wisdom, letting them know it came from them. I'm not going to say that I'm the one who came up with this, but
listen, man, you should be around people that are smarter than you. Like if you're the smartest one in the room, you're in the wrong room. Absolutely. You shouldn't be the only one in that room.
I always say I'm not smart, and that's what makes me smart. And I'll tell you exactly what that means.
You're not scared to ask questions.
I'm not scared to ask questions, but I make sure that I'm around smarter people, and that makes me smart. Yeah. I don't come up with some of these ideas, to whether it's marketing or whatever the case is. It's just because I'm around people that have already done it, that are better than I am.
Yeah.
So you've been in the industry for 8 years, 8 or 9 years. What advice would you give to like an up-and-coming, brand new real estate agent?
I'll become a brand new real estate agent. I would say, know your sphere. It's easier now. When I got my license, social media wasn't what it is today. It's a little easier to put yourself out there. Social media can be a gift and a curse. You have to.
Yes.
It can be a gift and a curse. So make sure the information that you're putting out is accurate. One.
Yeah.
If you're trying to share information.
100%.
And don't follow the trends. Like it's okay to see what other people are doing and put your own twist to it, but don't be too trendy. Be yourself. Stand out.
And I feel like, not to pat myself on the back or anything, but as far as the inspection industry goes,
we talk about this all the time.
But that's just me. Like, naturally, I'm a goofy person, so that's not like the funny content that I post. That's not me trying hard. That's not me strategically planning this out. That's literally me being myself. Like some of the funny stuff. And what I've learned is that I obviously want to educate my audience, but the reactions I get from the funny content is like quadruple than just me pointing out, hey, this is termite damage. This is how
you could bring people in different ways.
Yeah, so
it's all right.
But then again, I don't want to have all my content be funny just because I still take what I do very serious.
Of course, yeah.
You know, so I feel like you have to have a certain balance just so you're still being viewed as a professional at the end of the day.
Your social media is your business card.
Yeah, because some of these realtors, I feel like they post content where if I was a home buyer, I would think I would never hire this person just because of some of the goofy stuff that's out there. But this is someone's biggest purchase. But
yeah, I've seen that.
That's just me personally. I'm not trying to knock anyone, but
of course, no, you know what you do, man. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You know.
So what's your craziest real estate story?
A craziest real estate story. I'll tell the Queen story because that's like you can't never top that one. So I got a random call from a seller. They found my profile on Zillow, which I don't know how because I wasn't marketed in that area. He didn't live in New York. He lived in Pennsylvania. He's like, He's like, I just bought this house. It was like he bought it at an auction. I'm gonna meet you at the house with the keys. I want you to list it for me. Weird, but all right, whatever. So I met the guy in Queens. Went inside the house. He bought it as an auction. The house had no kitchen. Like literally, the people took the entire kitchen out of the house. But he wanted top dollar for it, and this is before the market was crazy. This is probably like 5 years ago. It took me 11 months to sell this house. 11 months.
Why so long?
One, he was unrealistic with the price, so he wouldn't take anything lower than the dollar amount that he wanted. Like, not even a penny lower. I had squatters at one point.
What?
Yeah, so we finally got an accepted offer. The day of the walkthrough, went to the house, and I see the neighbors all knew because I've been coming to this house for so long, and people were breaking in and out of this house forever. So the neighbors told me, the neighbors like, hey, Shawn, I saw that you finally sold the house. So I'm like,
wait, what?
What are you talking about? Yeah, I saw my neighbors shoveling the snow yesterday. We had a snowstorm the day before. I'm like, no. She's like, no, he has his dog, his wife, everyone's in the house. I'm trying to turn the locks, can't get inside the house. I'm like, oh, this is going to be interesting. Called the cops. So long story short, the guy got a fake lease from someone that he met on Jamaica Avenue. The guy brought him to the house, blah, blah, blah. Got him out of the house, and every day after that, someone was breaking into the house. The funniest part about this was...
Quick question. Did that person legit get, like, tricked into moving in, or was he the squatter?
I think he was a squatter.
Okay.
The house had no running water. Like, you couldn't have thought this was a legit apartment.
Did they install a kitchen, though, or...
No.
So they lived in the house with still no kitchen?
No kitchen, no running water,
and
the electricity only worked on one floor.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was horrible. The upstairs attic, I don't know if you're familiar... Well, you're familiar with Queen's house. Some of them have, like, upstairs walk-up attic. Yes. So the people that were living there prior didn't, I guess when they didn't want to go to the bathroom, they would just urinate in bottles and throw it behind the crawl space. Yeah. So in the summertime, the house, that's all you smell from the first floor. So I had to have someone clean it out. It was so bad that it was so hot up there, when they would take the bottles out, they would literally bust in their hands, like, because of the...
Lovely.
Yeah. It took me almost a year to sell that house. That's probably the worst one. Yeah.
So I have a similar story.
Yeah.
It was a house I was flipping, actually. It was this was very similar story. We actually bought it at auction, and it was occupied. And luckily, we got cash for keys, meaning that the person who's occupying the house, you basically pay them a fee to basically leave within 30 days or so. So 30 days later, the guy packed everything up. We paid him out. But towards the end, like the last 2 to 3 days prior, he was getting a little sketchy. And we were like, all right, we just hope this all just goes smoothly because we don't need a guy squatting.
Yeah.
So luckily, we got him out, and we start renovating the house. Now, midway through the renovation, pandemic hits.
Oh, wow.
Lockdown, no construction, can't do anything. And of course, I mean, I could say this now, but like we kind of had to shut the curtains and like, do the work because we couldn't sit on the house. There's no way. Yeah. So then we finished the renovation, but now you can't show the house. You know how you couldn't show any houses?
Yeah, we couldn't do anything at all.
It was all virtual.
Yeah.
People are losing their jobs, so we're like panic mode. We're just like, all right.
The world was ended. No one knew what the hell was going on.
I didn't know anything. Yeah, we're just like, are we going to get stuck with this house? Are we going to have to rent it now? And my mind is just scrambled every single day. So they start allowing showings like a month or two later. We finally get a buyer. After we had a previous buyer back out, you know how real estate is. You know, they just get finally get a buyer, and at this point, I just want to take the offer and just close out.
run.
I didn't even care if it was a lower offer.
Yeah.
I just wanted to offload the property. So we take this offer. We're under contract, and I'll never forget the closing was on a Tuesday, and the buyer calls me Saturday night at like 10 o'clock at night. She goes, Mike, I drove by the house, and there's a car in the driveway. The lights are on, you know, this and that. I'm like, wait, what? I was like, no way. Drove there. I flew down. I didn't even drive there. I flew down there because we're closing in like 48 hours. So I'm like, wait a minute. The same thing. I had to call the cops, obviously. The cops get there, and the people open the door immediately. You smell cigarette smoke in the house. They're just trashing the house.
I love it.
And they hit us with the, this house was for rent on Craigslist for, you know, whatever it was. But luckily, they weren't there long enough where, like, they couldn't, like, they had no ground to stand on. So luckily, the cops said, no, you got to leave right now. Because we were there often. Yeah. And they picked, like, a 3-day window where we just weren't there.
Weren't there, yeah. That's how it was with the Queen's house. Yeah.
They were just, like, this little 3-day window. But luckily, we caught them in time. So for investors out there, once your house is renovated, make sure you stop by, like, every other day
but again, they don't tell this. Like, no one says these stories.
And make sure the neighbors know, like, give the neighbors your number. Say, hey, if anyone's here at night, please call me up. And even tell the neighbors if they want to park it in the driveway overnight, so it looks like smart. The house is occupied at least. But yeah, so we got them out, and you know there were holes in the drywall, this and that. And then my partner and I, we legit had to drop everything we were doing, obviously, to patch the drywall up, to spackle, and
because you were still closing 24 hours.
Yeah, we sold the house. I wouldn't doubt that there was still wet paint on the walls.
Wow.
By the time the buyers moved in. That's how, like, crunch time, like, we had to just fix everything up.
You caught them in time.
Yeah.
Could you imagine?
Good thing the buyer happened to be in the area. Can you imagine driving there? Can you imagine going to the property thinking, all right, final walkthrough, because the house is fully renovated. And I'm a home inspector, so you already know there's going to be no issues. Like, I inspected my own, you know? So I can only imagine driving there, like, the day prior, just thinking, all right, we're going to do a walkthrough, this and that, and then finding out, like, that happened. But luckily, the buyer just happened to be in the area.
Good.
So that was my experience, you know, and
so if you're buying a house that is completely vacant, you should drive past that house.
Drive past it, let the neighbors know who you are.
Yeah, even as the buyer.
Your number,
go by the house every once in a while if you can.
Definitely, yeah. That's it's a wild story, but so you and I have had several conversations about, you know, expanding our business and things like that, and most importantly, which is what MG has told me too, is implementing systems.
Yes,
and you know. Like, I'm at a point now where I can't be the go-to person anymore for everything, at least.
You shouldn't want to be anywhere.
You know, I can't be in an attic answering my phone. What's your schedule looking like, Mike? Let's book a home inspection. You know, that's where it gets to a point you have to implement systems. So I would say that's my next step now, just trying to get that part down packed because, you know, when you're trying to keep up with demand, if you're trying to do it all by yourself, that's where I feel like people struggle.
Struggling, you'll never
fail.
grow. Yeah, you'll never grow. And that was one of my biggest hurdles for a while. And that's what I'm trying to implement more systems. When I got into the business, no one taught me anything. So I learned everything on the fly.
Yeah.
And you got a lot of bad habits. And to have a successful business, you need good habits and you need systems. If you don't have systems or those habits, you're either going to stay at where you're at and never elevate, or you're just going to crash and burn at some point.
Of course. And there's a book I would definitely recommend for those.
The E-Myth, right?
The E-Myth, yeah.
I started reading that, yeah.
It's a great book, So the E-Myth basically breaks down that every business owner has 3 different hats. I believe it's the technician, the manager, and the entrepreneur. Yeah. And the reason why small businesses fail is because the business owner is trying to wear all 3 hats at one time, all the time. And then those roles basically collide.
Yeah.
You know, so that book just states to, you know, outsource and delegate different people to these specific tasks, so you don't get in your own way, basically.
Yeah, sometimes it's hard to give your baby to other people, because you've been doing it so long, but you have to at some point.
You have to get out of your own way, and I've struggled with that myself. But once you realize you put trust in quality people, that's where I feel like it gets easier. But now there's going to be other hurdles with that too.
Of course,
there's always going to be levels of hurdles, no matter what.
No matter what, yeah. And investing, that's part of investing in your business, man. It's part of investing in it, and don't look at it as a monthly course. Look at it at the yearly course.
Of course,
that's what I said to myself when it came to the content, right? Because when I first started, I didn't have a lot of money to really invest because I wasn't technically working. And I was like, you know what? What is it going to cost me to not do this?
I think the same exact thing.
Yeah, if I don't do this, I'm going to be in the same spot I am next year, and I don't want to be in that space.
You won't have as much outreach as as engagement, things like that. And I thought the same thing, because I always tell people too, get a videographer, post quality content. Yeah, because then that's representing your brand. And the first thing they ask, how much is it though? I'm like, look, you got to think of it like how much is it going to cost to not have that?
To not have it, yeah. To not have it. And it's funny because you never know where... I got accepted offers from other agents because they saw my content.
That's crazy.
I remember I put in an offer during the Wild West of the market a few months ago in Huntington. And the agent called me just because he wanted to go over like some specs with the buyer. And I hear my podcast like in the background, but I thought it was on my phone. I'm like, my phone? Yeah. And he was like, and he's way older than me. He's like, I bumped into your podcast. I like what you're talking about. You know your stuff. We're going to accept your offer. You weren't the highest offer, but I feel comfortable going with you.
Look at that. That's going to, that what you just said is going to be the clip. That's going to be the trailer to this whole episode right now.
Do it. It's the truth, though. It's crazy, man. You just never know who's going to see it. That's why you said by putting out quality and make sure you put out stuff that's going to represent you the right way, because you never know who's watching.
And like you said before, you have to know what you're talking about.
Know what you're talking about.
And I've learned to not take this personal, but when you're posting content, you're obviously property of the public at that point. Once in a blue, you'll get people who troll you or like they just have negative comments, but it's just like people really have time to go out of their way to like spread that like garbage,
Exactly.
Just like
don't read the comments.
Yeah, I'm just like,
don't read the comments.
I don't know.
Someone's going to, that person on the other end they're miserable and they're going to stay miserable. So why even wrestle with that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned a story once, I believe it was on one of your podcast episodes, that you were driving to work, a job you didn't like, and you were listening to a podcast, I think?
I was listening to Charles' podcast.
Yeah, so speak about it.
So Handsome Homebuyer, I think he was probably one of the first podcasts that I didn't even know what the podcast was.
Yeah.
And I don't even know how I stumbled on it. But he was doing a lot of marketing for his own. So I started listening to it. And I would literally listen. I would leave work. I would have to be to work at 9 o'clock, and it probably took me like 20 minutes to get to work. But I would leave early. That way I could listen to the podcast on my way to work. And it just like, and he kept saying, start a podcast. You should start a podcast. Put your information out there. And it took me a long road to get to it, but I would listen to the people that were on those podcasts and just listen to their stories. Some of them was similar to mine, and it made me realize, like, people want to know you.
Yeah, of course.
The more they know you, the better you will be in life and in business. And I said this on one of my podcasts, like, I put this out for my kids, bro.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, if 20 years...
I saw that one, actually.
And if I'm not around, they can always go back to and hear Dad's voice and hear what I had to say about certain topics, and it may help them with something that may not have to do with anything with real estate related.
Of course.
You know what I mean? Like, imagine if I could hear my mother's voice right now. If I had just a dilemma that I was going through, it would give me some type of warmth to me. You know what I mean?
Of course.
So I do this for my kids, man. Like, everything I do is for the kids.
And you just had your second.
Just had my second one. Just had Jordan.
Congratulations.
Her birthday just passed. She just turned 1.
Just turned 1.
Just turned 1, man. And that's why I put my kids out there too. You never know who's watching. Right?
Yeah.
Some people.
That could be a.
It could be a gift and a curse.
To that,
you got to be careful with it because there are some weirdos out there.
Yeah, of course.
But I've had people say that you're a family man.
Other fathers,
You're a father. Like,
of course, yeah.
I feel comfortable with you. You feel more grounded. People like that stuff, bro.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. So, with that being said, how can people get a hold of you? How can they reach out if they're looking to connect with you? Maybe collaborate. I know you and I have spoke off the air.
Yeah, we got to do something soon.
Both of our schedules have been insane lately, but there will be another video. We actually have a pretty good idea.
Yeah, it's really dope.
Pretty good concept, I should say, on this next video. So stay tuned for that. But how can people get a hold of you?
You can find me on Instagram, Shawn Your Realtor, spelled out the right way. SHAWN is Shawn. Your Realtor. Phone number 718-840-8094. I am officially with Serhant. If you're looking for me, I could do business in Manhattan, all the boroughs. Get at me. I got you.
And Long Island, of course.
In Long Island, of course, yeah.
Shawn, I can't thank you enough for your time.
I appreciate you, bro.
Really appreciate it. This is another milestone because I feel like Shawn has been there for my milestones, from my 100th inspection, my 100th dinner, my first dinner for my 100th inspection, and now my podcast episodes. So Shawn, I can't thank you enough.
Always here to support you, bro.
And we're going to celebrate at the end of the month for you know what. So
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Let's do it.
All right, guys, stay tuned for the next one.